Hello, everyone. So we all feel the uncertainty and uneasiness, I would may say. That's the right word, uneasiness around the whole country of Ireland, uh, in every part, in every parish in the country. We see this uneasiness about immigration, particularly because we all know there's many people, nearly every week now, well, every day, literally, excuse me, every day there's protests up and down the length and breadth of the country to do with migration, people being thrown into communities by the state, being pushed in by An Garda Síochána O'Connor and facilitated by the state, and your local councils and your TDs do nothing to help people. And then when you raise any objections, etc., you're called far right extremist, racist, the whole shebang. But pretty much the words are meaningless nearly at this stage because there's only so many times they can call people far right extremists. And these are people literally in their 80s, grandmothers and stuff like that. And they're going to call them extremists and stuff. It's a bit too extreme if you ask me that. But it becomes meaningless when the media all the time saying far right extremists, etc. But it's not couldn't be that many far right extremists if literally everybody in the country is very up and not very happy because there's uneasiness in the country. And there's only so much times the government, your own government, not the foreign government or anything like that, your own government can call their own people far right extremists, evil people. Because the government simply don't care. It's simple as that. But the uneasiness can be felt all over the state. Because this sense of uneasiness and this sense that the government has betrayed the people and have, and let's not beat around the bush here. They have betrayed the people many times over, not even just on immigration, many other things. Every day of the week, the adding on stuff to betray the country. They have betrayed their own people, not even the foreign people. They've betrayed their own people first of all. But the uneasiness now, it's for the last few years, we see this, and again, it's not great to have uneasiness in society. Of course, some people to have mistrust in society, and it's all about mistrust. And the whole function of society is about trust. And unfortunately, that trust has been broken for a very long time in this state. Years ago, you could trust society. Nowadays, people are very hesitant to trust society, and it's a sad thing to say, but it's the truth. Years ago, you could let your child go and play in your front garden without a care in the world. Nowadays, not so much, and it's an unfortunate thing to say, but it's the truth. We can't live in denial and say it is allowed, it's safe to put your children out. It isn't safe. It isn't really safe to go walking around major towns or cities in Ireland nowadays, in modern Ireland. That's a sad thing to say. It's the same in Dublin. We see it all the time with tourists. They're terrified of their life to walk any part of Dublin. Same with even local people. They're mortified to go into Dublin city centre, where people fought for independence in 1916, just to say the same government want to turn the GPU into some kind of, I don't know what kind of thing, but they want to turn it into some kind of backwards looking idea of sovereignty. That's me, how Martin keeps saying it. Because they hate the foundations of this state. They hate the foundations of the people that fought for our country and for a future for us, for the Irish people. But they hate that, they despise that, they want to get rid of that. They're determined to abolish that, to rewrite history, I suppose, in a way. But the uneasiness, and again, we all say about it, it is upsetting to see, and it is frightening to see. Because obviously with uneasiness and people that not been listened to, because people are not being listened to on immigration, people are very up and down the left and right of the country. We see it that people are not happy, and simple as that. People are not happy, and the government lecture people pretty much to call them far right extremists, etc. And there's only so many times you can do that without people getting very very angry. And to be totally honest, nearly at this stage is rightly so because it's not like a new thing that just turned up in the last 5 minutes. It's something that's literally been for the last few years, and the government, their solution is to ignore it and hopefully go away and label people extremists, etc. And hopefully it will eventually go away. But fact for the government that it's not going to go away anytime soon. Um, and it's simple as that. It's simply not going to go away. How many times you try and ignore it, the TDs and senators, it's just not going to go away. It's not one of those things where you can sweep it under the rug, unfortunately. They would love to do it, but they've swept many things under the rug in this history of the state. But as I say, we have to address it because if we don't address it, as I say, people will get very angry. People have got very. We've seen the Dublin riots. People will get very angry because again, that's why you address problems. You don't run away from the problem. You address it like head on, because that's the only way to address things. If you face it head on and listen to people and try and do something to at least even meet people halfway. What I mean by that is put a cap on everybody that can come in a year. Simple as that. Say, for example, only 2,000 people or something like that can come into the state a year as asylum seekers or anything like that. But there's been no effort to even try and meet people halfway. And that's what I'm trying to say. Even if they said, look, we'll level with you. We'll go halfway. Or we'll do something, we'll meet you halfway. But there's not even an attempt to do that by the state. And that's what's making people more angry. And particularly because many Irish people are suffering very heavily, and there's nothing really done to help them. So it doesn't make any sense in a way too. But as I say, the main thing I suppose to take away from this, because it's a long ramble I suppose too, but it is uneasiness. I hear it all the time from people. The people feel very uneasy about the situation because there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of fear out there, and there's a lot of emotions. This is the end of it. Like the whole lot of it put together. There's a lot of emotions about this. In a lot of communities, there's a lot of communities torn apart by this. By people going in the middle of the night. New Town Kennedy, take for example, in Wicklow. Many Coolock in Dublin too. We've seen what happened in Coolock in the paid factory. Even other parts, take for example Carrickmacross, just down the road from me here in County Monaghan, torn apart too. The village is torn apart from what has transpired the last few months in Carrickmacross, not to mention other parts of the country. And even in my own area of County Cavan, there's a few areas of Cavan where things are not going too well. But again, all this uneasiness is not a good thing for society. And it's not a good thing for democracy because we live in a so-called democracy, so-called quotation marks. But it's not a good thing for society, and particularly because it goes back to this, and as I said in the beginning, it's mistrust. People don't have trust and faith in society. And particularly when you see young people, it's a sad thing to see when you see young people that have their whole life ahead of them feel very mistrustful. And to be totally honest, I wouldn't really blame them to be mistrustful in society. But the thing I'm trying to say is it's a sad thing when you see it. It shouldn't have to come to the point where young people feel mistrust in society and feel like the government is their enemy. And of course, to be totally honest, the government nearly is your enemy at this stage, the Irish state. Because they don't have, and again, I say this straight, nearly don't have the best, and they don't, we can say with a fine-tooth comb, that they don't have the interest of the Irish people at heart. They serve another power. They don't serve the Irish people. They serve some other power, wherever they may be. We could make many suggestions on where they serve. But let's be fair, they don't serve the Irish people because we see time and time again, when it's housing, when it's homelessness, when it's this and when it's that, when it's the other, that there's not much care for the Irish people. And we see with the GPO, what they're trying to do at the moment. There's literally no care whatsoever. There's no emotion. That's what I mean. The emotionless. I don't know what you would describe, but that's the current government. The emotionless and inhuman, I suppose, in the way too. The response you get, and especially because again, many people raising concerns about immigration, and in a democracy, the main thing about democracy is people voice their concerns, and people are able to speak freely and openly. Because making people, and again, this is the last point I want to make. Shutting people up and saying, you're far right extremes, or even calling them far left, whatever it may be, it is all terms to try and silence people, trying to silence debate. And that's the thing. In a democracy, regardless if you're far left or far right or who you are, or whatever you want to call yourself, you're still entitled to your opinion. And you often hear me, even on Twitter and stuff, you see people saying mad stuff, from whatever right set to conservative left, whatever. But at the end of the day, they still have a right to say it. If they do believe in it, that's their belief. There's nothing really you can do to stop it. But what I'm trying to say is, using these labels particularly to censor people, to try and shut them up, because that's mainly what it is, just to try and shut people up, is not a good thing for society and for the future democracy too, when we use these labels to try and silence and critique people. What I suggest is focus on what the person's saying, and not focus on what's the ideology and stuff. Focus on what they're saying and address that, because we're too busy worrying about the person, the individual, I suppose, in a way. And of course, it's important to have the individual. It's not, you're not soulless, pretty much a person that's soulless, I hope not. But we're too busy focusing on the individual, not the issues. And I think the issues matter more than the person, because an issue is more than one person. It's a whole nation, and it's a whole community, and it's a whole country, and it's a whole county. Because we're too busy focused on the person and not the issues. And I think it is true, and that's what the woman behind me is many times has said, and I do think it's very true in terms of many things, that we're too focused on the person than the issue. But anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more, and bye.